Welcome to our Interviewing 101 session for the Aspiring Principals Conference. Dr. Todd Bess, IASP Executive Director here, and certainly wish that we were all together for this, but perhaps this will be helpful to you to watch prior to the upcoming interviews you might have. And as a recording, certainly you can go back and take a look at it as well. So just a few slides and a few comments from me after having done a lot of interviewing and after having been interviewed several times as well. Obviously, we want you to look good during your interview, and some of you might be heading out to purchase a new suit or new outfit for that all-important time, or maybe you're pulling out that suit that you haven't worn quite so recently because in a teaching world, you're probably a little more casual because you need to be a whole lot more comfortable sometimes when you're in front of those kids. So the question is, are you looking good or feeling comfortable? Sometimes I've sat on the other side of the desk doing an interview, and it was clear that the person who was being interviewed was very uncomfortable. And we don't want that for you. You're on the spot, 30, 45 minutes or so. And if that what you're wearing isn't very comfortable, it will come through. You're going to be a little hotter, a little warmer than normal. Might start to sweat just a little bit more as the questions come to you and you're the only one doing most of the speaking. So be sure whatever you're going to wear, you try it out. I know that sounds funny, but please do so. Also, as you are heading to the school for the interview, very likely as you arrive, they're going to say, let's take a tour. Let's walk the building. And as you know, school people walk very quickly. And so if what you're wearing is not comfortable or the shoes maybe haven't been worn as recently, that could be a pretty uncomfortable walk and tour. And we don't want to do anything or have you do anything that makes the actual interview portion not the best. So practice wearing your clothes for your interview. Several comments on being professional. Some are maybe obvious, some are maybe little tips or things that I think are important. So your cell phone is not only off, it's in the car. I've never had it happen, but I spoke with a person one time who said in an interview, the person they were interviewing had their phone ring not once, but twice, and they answered it both times. That interview ended very quickly. Don't run the risk of what could happen when your phone rings, even though you think you've got it shut off. Leave it in the car. You'll get back to it within that hour and you'll be just fine. All the social media things that we could be involved in right now, that's your profile. That's who you are. I'd take time to Google yourself. I'd take time to look at your screen names. I'd take time to see what you've posted and perhaps do some editing before you head for that interview. It's an easy, quick click to find you online. And if something's on there that you're not entirely happy about, but you can't really get rid of it because it does live in the digital world, then be prepared to explain it and just be upfront. With the clock, how early do you arrive for the interview? Good question. And I even say about an hour early. Now, that doesn't mean you go sit in the office for an hour, but I make sure if I can, I get to the location of that town or that city or that locale about an hour early. I drive around, I look at what's going on. Perhaps I stop in for coffee and I read the bulletin boards that are posted in the local shops. And I see and I understand what's valued in the community, maybe what the schools are even doing. Schools are often posting things in those areas. So that when you go into the interview, and they ask a question about the community or why would you want to come here, you have real firsthand knowledge. I even went to a community for one of my first positions or prior to and talked with the waitress that was there in the Jim Dandy in Frankfort. I asked, what do you think of the schools here? And that honest answer of, I think they're pretty good, gave me confidence in going into the interview. Now, getting to the office and being available to step in for the interview, I think that's a 20 to 15 minute arrival time before you were scheduled. Any longer than that, it becomes a little uncomfortable or maybe even a little strange because you kind of sit there and look at everybody and they look at you. But in that 15-minute range, it gives you a chance to see the interaction between the administrative assistants and the faculty and the staff and the parents and the kids. You see how the faculty and staff treat the administrative assistants. You see how they treat you. It's be obvious that you're there for an interview. And when people come in and talk to you and say, hey, it's great to see you. Are you here for an interview? Good luck. That tells you a lot. Equally telling when they come in, ignore you, glance aside, or just kind of keep on moving. Interviewing is a two-way street. Being in the office prior to the interview is a definite part of the interview. After every time I would interview somebody, I would say to my administrative assistant, who actually led the tour of the building, what do you think? Should we keep this person on the interview slate? So be prepared that that's also a large part of what you're going to be expected to do in an interview. The other part you're going to do prior, and that's research. Clearly, it's much easier now than long ago when I went to Frankfurt and sat in the Jim Dandy for coffee, and I went to the local library and looked up newspapers for the last several weeks. You've got all volumes of data available to you off DOE websites. Clearly, the schools have a lot of information posted there. All of that becomes part of your answers to questions that come up during the interview. Part of all that comes up as the questions you should be asking them in the interview. So do your research and drive to the community. Understand what's going on there, because again, in a two-way street, you're a good candidate. Clearly, you wouldn't have gotten the interview if you hadn't been that quality person. The job offer that comes your way, we want to make sure that you're equally as prepared to say yes to them. And if you're not interviewing them through this research and the conversations, then you're potentially putting yourself in a position that won't turn out as well. And we don't want that for you as you begin that first administrative opportunity. Clearly, an interview is all about selling yourself. So a part of the Aspiring Principals Conference is practicing and doing a mock interview. And clearly this year in the virtual world, that's how several are going to have to happen as well as you interview with schools. Practice with your own current administrators. Ask them for time. Ask them for that 30 minutes. And maybe it's only the first few questions that you want to practice or the last few, but practice. Seek out other professionals that you know who may not necessarily be in the school world, but have done a variety of interviews. We want you to be as prepared as possible. And every time you try it, you'll help identify the phrasing that you sometimes get stuck on, or even the little physical tics that you might do that can be distracting during an interview. Another thing to practice are the responses to two questions. And they're the two easiest, and I think the two hardest. Question one is about what everybody gets at the very beginning. Tell me about yourself. That should be the easiest, but you've got so much that you can say. You've got to make sure that you're concise enough that you don't drag it out. I once had a person tell me about themselves for 15 minutes. That did not go well. The other question that you want to be prepared to answer is the last question. Why are you the best person for the job? Again, this should be a slam dunk. You know yourself, you know the school, you've just had a 30 or 45-minute interview. Be prepared to say, I'm the best candidate because. In the administrative world, you've got a lot of experiences. How are you going to help that particular school with all those experiences? As a teacher, I know how you're going to help our school. You're going to educate kids in your content area or your grade level. As an administrator, you're now part of an administrative team. And so being prepared to help sell yourself as to why you're the best person makes a big difference. What do you take? I usually took 3 to 4 to maybe 6 pieces of paper. Maybe it was my resume, maybe it was a further list of references, probably was a list of things that I had accomplished that I wasn't able to include in the application process, especially now that it's digital. Put that together. I'd put that in a nice little bit of a presentation folder or folio, oftentimes matching the school colors, I'll admit to that, and have that prepared for the people that are going to be in the interview. And who is that going to be? Well, clearly it's going to be the lead administrator, whether that's the superintendent or the principal. Oftentimes department chairs or grade level leaders, instructional coaches. It's absolutely appropriate for you to ask how many people will be in the interview and then anticipate 2 or 3 more. Oftentimes the principal has somebody coming in maybe over the summer and they say, hey, why don't you join this interview? I think this would be helpful. And so now instead of having 3 handouts for 3 people, you've got 3 handouts for 5. Take extras. You can always recycle them. That's a pretty minimum investment for getting that first position. So what happens when you get a question that you're not really sure how to answer? 2 or 3 ideas on that. One, when they offer you a glass of water or something to drink for the interview, take it. So when you get that hard question, you can take a sip of water. That 10 seconds gives you a chance to kind of formulate your answer, think about how you're going to respond, and you don't just sit there kind of staring, saying, I don't know. Another good strategy is to ask the question back of the person who asked it. You know, I think I've heard of that concept or that program. Would you tell me just a little bit more about it? I want to make sure I'm accurate. School people love to tell all about what they've got going on. And that will often then give you the answer that you need. And you may have had an inkling of what you were going to say, but maybe you didn't. And now you know how to respond. Obviously, too, a good answer is, I'm not sure. I had that come up in my first interview for a principal's position. I did not know what a class school was. Now, once they explained it to me, it made sense. And I did my research on it. So when I went back for round 2, I knew exactly what it was all about. And I accessed a person in my own corporation who was a class school. So it is okay to say, I don't know, and then learn about it so you can relate to it, whether in that interview or in the second round. I mentioned a little bit about interviewing the school. All that research should allow you to provide questions when asked. Again, similar to those, tell me about yourself and why are you the best person for the job? An easy way to get tripped up is, what questions do you have for us? And if you don't have any, again, that's a failure to prepare. You should have a ton of questions. I always kept a pad of paper with me. It let me jot down what questions they were asking me so I knew how to prepare for round 2. And it let me think about little questions I might want to ask of the people in the interview that came up just during the process. Be prepared, take your notes, ask the right questions. You're interviewing them too. In the thank you note world, I think it's also a very okay and appropriate to send a thank you follow-up email. Dear principal, and to the interview committee, I want to let you know I enjoyed very much the chance to interview with you and your team. I learned a tremendous amount about your school. I look forward to the next opportunity, as I think I'm a great fit and bring these qualities to you and your team. Clearly, a thank you note too can also be sent, and maybe you do both. But make sure you follow up. Again, it's all about being professional. You may not get this position, but administrators talk. And so when you are professional in this interview that you are not successful in, it helps you in the second round, because somewhere along the way, they're going to mention your name, or you're going to see them again because you're probably interviewing within your own local area. Be professional, follow up. And there's your network. School administration can be lonely. We want you to have the right supports. And as an association, ISP has a volume of supports to help beginning and experienced administrators. And we can talk about that at a whole nother PowerPoint. But this network is going to be vital to you being successful. Again, as an association, we're going to provide things. If you're an elementary principal, probably within your school corporation, you may have multiple buildings. That's a part of your network. Your athletic conferences in the middle school and high school world are a part of your network. And very often within your area, there'll just be area principal meetings. Get this network started. Understand that it's vital to your success. It's also vital to you being successful in the interview, because the references that you listed on your application are important, and I would call them. At the same time, I know a lot of people, and I'm going to call everybody that I know from your school and your area, because you have a past history with them, and I want to know all about it. Equally important, do your research on my network. Find out about me. Find out what my interests are. Find out what kind of person I am. That's a part of being comfortable with whom you're going to work and being able to establish the relationship. The administrative world is about being a part of a team and getting that networking going from within building and exterior to the building will help make you successful. So I hope these little tips and tricks might give you a little bit of insight, might help you along the way. Certainly, we're going to follow up on that with other parts after your mock interviews, but please reach out to us at any time, whether you're in preparation for an interview, you've gotten that first position, or in 10 to 20 years when you want to give back, just as our facilitators are doing for us during this conference. So thank you again, and let us know how we can help you.